The audience barely noticed him when he first stepped onto the stage, a quiet Filipino man, modestly dressed, eyes lowered, clutching the microphone with trembling hands. There were no dramatic gestures, no flashy introduction. Even the judges exchanged puzzled glances, unsure of what to expect. With a soft voice, he simply said, "I will sing an Elvis song." A few people in the crowd chuckled. Elvis? They had seen countless impersonators attempt the king's voice, most failing miserably. The lights dimmed. A classic guitar intro played. Then, it happened. A deep, velvety baritone erupted from his chest, rich and hauntingly familiar, echoing the very soul of Elvis Presley. The entire room froze. Conversation stopped. Gasps echoed across the hall. It wasn't just an imitation, it was as if Elvis had returned, reborn through this humble Filipino singer. His pronunciation, his phrasing, even the emotional tremble in his voice sent chills through the audience. Simon Cowell, notorious for his stone-cold reactions, slowly leaned forward, eyebrows raised in disbelief. His eyes widened. He wasn't just impressed, he was shocked. The voice carried not only power, but raw, aching emotion. When the singer hit the tender line, "Take my hand, take my whole life too," the camera caught tears in the eyes of several audience members. By the final note, the hall erupted. The crowd leaped to their feet in a thunderous standing ovation. The singer stood frozen, overwhelmed, as if waking from a dream. Simon whispered into his mic, "That was spiritual. This was no tribute act. No gimmick. It was a soul calling across time." On that stage, a humble Filipino man didn't just sing Elvis. He resurrected a legend. After his stunning performance, cameras followed him backstage. The audience had seen the voice, but now they were about to discover the story, the silent storm behind the song. Sitting in a quiet corner, clutching a small rosary, he finally spoke about his life. He came from a tiny fishing village in the Philippines, raised by his grandmother after losing his parents at a young age. They owned no television, no luxury, only an old radio that played crackling songs from distant stations. Among them was a voice that changed his life forever, Elvis Presley. As a boy, he didn't understand the English lyrics, but he felt every note. He mimicked the sound, the emotion, the soul, singing alone by the ocean at night. In school, kids mocked him. "You're trying to be someone who died decades ago," they laughed. But he never chased fame. He sang at town fiestas, weddings, jeepney rides, anywhere he could share music. His grandmother would say, "If God gave you a voice, use it to heal hearts." That stayed with him. Years passed. He worked odd jobs, saved every peso, and took a risk, traveling abroad for an audition, carrying only a second-hand suit and his dream. He never believed the world would listen. He only wanted to sing once on a real stage. But that once became a miracle. Now, the clip of his performance was going viral across social media. People around the world were sharing his voice with captions like, "Elvis lives in the Philippines." He was becoming a global sensation, yet he remained humble, whispering, "I just sang from my heart." This episode ends with a phone call, his grandmother crying with pride. The world saw a singer. She saw her little boy who never gave up. The world was already mesmerized by his Elvis voice, but Simon Cowell had one final test. During rehearsals, Simon approached him quietly and said, "I want you to sing a song no one dares to touch. If I Can Dream." It was a legendary piece, powerful, raw, written by Elvis during a time of protest and hope. Even seasoned performers avoided it. The pressure was immense. He stood alone in the rehearsal room, staring at the microphone. Doubt weighed on him. What if I fail? What if I disappoint people? Memories flooded back, singing in nipa huts, on street corners, in church halls. He remembered his grandmother's words, "Sing not to impress, but to touch." With that, he took a deep breath and began practicing, pouring every struggle, every lonely night into the song. The night of the performance arrived. The stage was dark, a single spotlight on him. The orchestra began. He closed his eyes. There must be lights, burning brighter somewhere. His voice wasn't just powerful, it was pleading, aching, filled with a dream larger than himself. Each lyric echoed beyond the theater, through every person watching. It wasn't Elvis they heard now, it was a Filipino soul crying for a chance. By the climax, the cameras caught Simon, standing. For once, words failed him. When the final note trembled into silence, the hall exploded into emotion. Some cried. Some raised their hands. All were changed. Simon finally spoke, voice low but clear. I've heard Elvis. I've met legends. But tonight, you proved something. You're not an impersonator. You're an artist. Backstage, he wept, not for victory, but for release. He hadn't just passed the challenge. He had claimed his own voice within a legend's legacy. With millions of views flooding the internet, the world now knew him as the Filipino Elvis. But inside, he battled a new question: am I just a voice from the past, or can I create something of my own? Critics praised him but challenged him too: can he do more than imitate? One morning, he received a message that changed everything, an invitation to perform an original piece on the live stage. A song not by Elvis, but by him. The risk was enormous. Fans expected that iconic Elvis tone. But this time, he didn't want to be a mirror. He wanted to be a flame. In late-night rehearsals, he crafted a song blending Filipino passion with Elvis-style soul, a tribute, but also a declaration. It had rolling rock rhythms, heartfelt Tagalog lines, and a soaring finale. He titled it, Buhay Ko, Pangarap Ko, My Life, My Dream. The night of the performance, the audience expected Jailhouse Rock or Love Me Tender. Instead, silence fell as he said, tonight, I sing not as Elvis, but as myself. The music began. His voice roared, familiar yet new. It had Elvis's fire, but also the heartbeat of a Filipino warrior. The crowd leaned in, unsure at first, then overwhelmed. They weren't just hearing a tribute. They were hearing transformation. By the final note, people were chanting his name, not Elvis's, but his. For the first time, he wasn't compared to a legend. He became one in his own right. Backstage, Simon approached with a rare smile. You just stepped out of his shadow, and into your destiny. The episode ends with a headline flashing across the world. A legend reborn, not as Elvis, but as himself. Months after capturing the world's heart, an unexpected invitation arrived, from Graceland, Elvis Presley's legendary home. A global tribute concert was being held, and they wanted him to perform. The boy who once sang to the waves of a Philippine shoreline was now walking where Elvis once walked. As he arrived in Memphis, fans from around the world recognized him, not as an impersonator, but as the sole voice of the Philippines. Cameras followed his every step, but he remained humble, clutching his grandmother's rosary, whispering a prayer of thanks. Backstage, before the final performance, he knelt and touched the wooden stage floor. Thank you, Elvis, for teaching me to dream. When he stepped onto that sacred stage, the audience expected an Elvis classic. Instead, he began with silence, then in a soft, reverent tone, he sang, My Way, the iconic anthem of farewell and courage, in a powerful fusion of Elvis style and Filipino emotion. The hall fell utterly still. This wasn't just a performance. It was a farewell, not to Elvis, but to the shadow he once stood in. By the final line, I did it, my way, tears streamed through the crowd. Even Simon, watching from the front row, stood with hand over heart. As the final applause roared like thunder, the world understood. He did not become Elvis. He proved that legends inspire new legends. He returned home to the Philippines to find thousands waiting at the airport, waving flags, singing his name. Not Elvis. His own. From a forgotten village to the world stage. From imitation to immortality. This was not the rebirth of Elvis. It was the rise of a Filipino icon.